Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Mountaineer Farm Talk. My name is J.J. Barrett, and I'm the Extension Agent for Agriculture and Natural Resources here in Wood County, West Virginia. And we are going to be talking about fruit tree pruning and management with our special guest, Dr. Mira Delanovich. Mira, how are you doing this morning?
Great. Thank you, JJ.
Good. We want to welcome you to the program. With the said Mira is our WVU Extension Specialist for Consumer Horticulture. Of course, she is the leader of the Master Gardener program here in West Virginia. Mira, I heard that there are quite a few people signed up for the Master Gardener program here in West Virginia.
Oh, yes. We had this spring a new crop of new people. 110 actually signed up for this spring training.
Wow. 110 new Master Gardeners
Yes.
throughout West Virginia.
And I may add, that if there is one good thing about COVID is that we gained more than 400 people that we have trained in these last 2 years. So with additional 110, so you're talking close to about 550 people that we will have trained.
That is awesome. Real quick, I want to do our commodity minute.
Okay.
I want to check on the price of corn. I have to say that all of our commodities, of course, have went up. Corn these are all cash prices, $7.02. Soybeans are at $16 a bushel, and wheat has jumped up to $10.76 a bushel. And checking with our local fertilizer prices, urea, which is a source of nitrogen for us here in West Virginia, $873 a ton. Potash fertilizer is about 800, and MAP, which is of course for phosphorus, is $975. Our fertilizer prices have increased quite a bit. On the local livestock market at Buchanan, steers were averaging $1.44 to $1.70, and heifers were $1.25 to $1.47. And of some of our cull cow prices, slaughter cows were 64 to 81, and bred cows topped out at $1,280 a head. And here at Jackson County Livestock in Ripley, there were a group of 12 400-pound calves that averaged $1.94. A group of 3 weights brought $1.98, and our slaughter cattle were averaging 79 to 84 cents. So, like I said, our commodity prices are up, as of course we were just talking before the show started this morning, how the fuel prices are up. Food prices are going to definitely be affected by that this summer. Also, I want to introduce Alex Smith. She is, of course, one of my co-hosts with the most. Alex, how are you doing this morning?
Doing good. Glad to be here.
Alex is also on our team here for the Mountaineer Farm Talk. Okay, let's go ahead and dive right in to talking about fruit trees. Of course, anyone that and Alex knows as an extension agent, we always have a lot of homeowners, home gardeners, enthusiasts that love to plant fruit trees. Mira, of course, this is probably as we're in the last part of the dormant season, why is this such a good time to prune fruit trees?
Well, you just in your question, you just gave part of the answer. Just because we're still in dormancy, but we are we're actually at the point where we're getting out of dormancy at this point. And this is recommended, to do some of the major pruning right at the late winter, early spring, so we do not affect dormancy too much. Each pruning brings the trees out of dormancy for a little bit. If you're doing it like in late winter, it takes about a couple weeks for the tree to regain what it's lost as far as dormancy is concerned. So again, if you're pruning the mature trees and young trees, there's a difference in approach there. You know, with the mature trees, the best timing is to make all these cuts in late winter. So you're talking probably January, February. And with the young trees, you want rather to prune them a little bit late than too early. Pruning them too early again might affect dormancy, might set them up for some freeze injury. So postponing that and pruning them kind of second part of March, mid to second part of March, and even going to first part of April is probably better than pruning them too early, let's say January, early February.
Yeah, Mira, continuing on with that, why is it so important there in that I know that a lot of our nurseries are setting out trees. People drive by and they see apple trees, peach trees, and they're thinking, "Man, I want to plant some fruit trees." Why is it so important those first 2 or 3 years to make sure that those trees are pruned correctly? And how do they
Yeah.
do that?
Okay. First of all, it is important to select the proper tree and the healthy tree most of all. You know, you have to inspect your tree for particularly graft union, not to have any damage to the graft union, to make sure that everything is nice and completely healed, no insect damage, no disease damage. Inspect the root system if you're buying, and my preference would be to
Oh, I think that we just lost Mira there for a minute. Are you back?
buy the bare root trees rather than containers. Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think we lost you just for a minute there, but isn't that first? Now I thought the first year or two is that tree called a whip, the young
Oh,
tree.
well, depends, you know, depends what type of a tree you're getting. Some nurseries do an excellent job, and you can get, well, most nurseries really do a really good job in producing the trees. And so sometimes you're going to get the trees that are without these lateral branches, and it's going to be just like a web. Some trees may have already a set of branches, and we call those feathers. So if you get the feathered tree, you will definitely need to do that initial pruning to, first of all, eliminate anything that is damaged, broken up mainly, and something that is not in the right place. If it is too low, or if it is too strong, competing with the leader, you have double leaders and stuff. So these are some elements that you have to consider. And rule of thumb is leaving like 3 to 5 well spaced lateral branches that would create that main tree frame, and set it up for a good production potential later on in their lives. So in the first couple, 3 years, all your pruning is going to be focused on creating that architecture of the tree, so that you don't have to prune too much later on once it starts producing. Again, the distribution of and position of these branches is very important. By manipulating the angle of the branch in reference to the leader, you can and you should try to position them more or less kind of flat, and the angle should be anywhere between 55, 70 degrees. Under that angle, people have researched that over the years and found out that this type of angle is providing you really good balance between the vegetative growth and flower bud formation. The more flatter the angle, the more of the flower buds you're going to have. And the more steep the angle, or if you look into those so-called water sprouts, basically all these new shoots that go straight up vertically or 90 degrees to the horizontal, they're very vigorous, they're very strong, but there's no fruit there. So, as I said, by manipulating these angles, putting some spreaders to keep them in position for the first season, that will give you a really nice, strong architecture of the tree that is going to be able to give you all the fruit that you want.
Mira, let me, I guess maybe we should backtrack
Sure. Yeah.
we'll circle back.
Okay.
What, before some of our homeowners head out there with, to the orchard, to the backyard orchard, what tools should they use? And
Sure.
typically I only just have the big set of loppers.
Yeah.
But what tools do we need? And
Well, depends, what you're cutting for you gotta have special tools or appropriate tools for the appropriate job. If you're going and just whipping those 1-year-old trees, you don't necessarily need loppers, but you can do it with the set of pruners. And when we're talking about the pruners, there are a couple of possibilities. You have so-called bypass or scissor-like motion pruners, and you have the anvil pruners. Those anvil ones I'm not a fan of. They're good for removing the dead wood. However, if you're removing try to cut the alive wood, they have a tendency to mash it up, to macerate it. So my preference would be to go with bypass pruners. Make sure that your blade is clean and very sharp. The pruners are lubricated, which is going to have easier, or it's going to be easier in your hand. If you're doing a lot of pruning, you'll find out if you have dull pruners and they're kind of rusted out and stuff, it's going to be much harder on your
Sure.
hand.
Sure.
So,
And I guess for all of us power tool fans, when can we get the chainsaw out? Or can we?
well, you're getting the chainsaw out if you're dealing with some neglected trees or trees that are in full production. So like 15, 20, 25-year-old trees, where you want to do some rejuvenation pruning, 30 years or so trees. Whenever you have those really large limbs, they're like 5, 6 inches in the diameter, then you're going to pull either reciprocal saw or your chainsaw. I know many people are favoring the chainsaw because it does a good job and it's quick.
Right.
When we're talking about that, again, I have to mention that just grabbing the chainsaw and going out and making that one flush cut is not good practice. I have to mention the type of cuts, and we normally refer to it 1, 2, 3 cut. What that means, and this is when you're dealing with these large diameter limbs, you gotta make the undercut about 1/3 through the diameter of that limb you want to cut. So that's going to be the first cut. In a sense, this is going to be sort of like a break. The second cut is going to be outside of that undercut, kind of towards the periphery of the crown, and maybe about a foot or so away. And then you make that second cut is all through that limb. Once you get 1/2 to 2/3 of that limb, due to the heavy weight of that limb, it's probably going to break. And without that undercut, that would have gone all the way down and ripped the bark off your trunk. So that undercut, you see, undercut is sort of like a break, and this is where it's going to stop, and it's not going to tear up the bark. The third cut is going to be close to just outside of the branch collar, and the branch collar is that fattening or that knobby ring, at the base of that limb, and positioning your chainsaw is going to be just outside of that, as I said, and pretty much under a 90-degree angle in reference to the limb you're cutting. So you're not going to make that flush cut. By making the flush cut, you're actually eliminating the collar. And the collar of the branch is the place where all these hormones are going to start working, trying to heal that wound. So that's how and when we are going to apply the chainsaw.
Okay, Miriam, I want to move real
Okay.
quick back to the a lot of questions we get from homeowners. Kind of elaborate the difference between that, and I always explain it to people like a Christmas tree, that your
Yes.
apples and pears, you want that central leader,
Mm-hmm.
and your peaches and stone fruits, do you want that open center? Kind of explain the difference between that and how we
Sure.
train those trees.
All right. The idea in both types of pruning, whether you're having central leader or open center of base, is the exposure to the sun. The sunlight is necessary for flower bud formation. So the more sun you allow to penetrate through the crown, the better is going to be for your overall cropping. So the central leader, you start that by, as I said, trying to, if you get the feather tree, you kind of take 3 to 5 of these laterals, and then you eliminate any potential double leaders. So you have to have one. And in order to, if it's too long of a shoot, let's say about 3-4 feet, if you don't make the heading cut, if you don't remove that terminal bud, that tree is going to continue to grow, and you're going to have a very large empty space between the first scaffolds and the second set of scaffolds. So to prevent that from happening, because that terminal bud is producing the hormone that basically eliminates the competition by suppressing the opening of the lateral buds. Once you remove that bud, hey, lateral buds start opening up, and you have much better fill up of that empty space. So once you have a bunch of new branches, you're going to be able to pick and choose the ones that you want. So by creating that Christmas tree shape, each next step or each next set of those laterals should be slightly narrower than the bottom one. And again, the basic idea in it is preventing it from shading and allowing that light penetration. And that's going to be, first of all, for the number of flower buds and number of fruits that you're going to get. And secondly, you're going to have a better sun exposure of that fruit. So you're going to have overall, as we refer to it, as a better quality fruit. So it's going to have more sugar in it. It's going to have a better color. It's going to be overall much nicer looking and better tasting fruit. When it comes to the open center, you will, and when I do that in some of the pruning demonstrations, some of the guys just cringe, when they see me do it, because I practically eliminate half of the tree. I make that cut if I'm whipping the tree and I want to create that open base. I'm going to cut it down to about 32 inches. And that's going to give me some laterals. And then I'm going to cut out the central portion of that leader, leaving 3 to 5 laterals that are well spaced, looking from the bird's eye view. It has to be, if we, let's say for the ease of discussion, if we assume that we have 3 of those branches, they should be spaced like about 120 degrees apart. And looking along the shaft, they need to be not from the same spot. If they're coming all from the same spot, that's a really weak connection. Architecturally, it's not strong and it's going to break. The minimum distance between these branches, looking at the shaft, should be a couple inches. So they should be a couple inches apart vertically, and looking from above, about 120 degrees apart. From
Mira,
there on,
do have
yeah.
a question here back to the pruners. What's the best thing to lubricate your
Oh,
pruners with?
I just use the WD-40.
Okay.
If you have the chainsaw lubricant, you can use that. Any type of oil, you know, if you are kind of desperate and you then don't have anything handy, you have your car, just take a dipstick and just put a couple of 2 drops and it will work. But the most important thing for your pruners really is going to be to have a sharp blade, so you don't kill yourself and you don't kill the tree.
Right. The hey, WD-40, that's got to be in everybody's toolbox.
Sure.
The back to the open center.
Mhm.
Well, I have a couple questions before we continue with that. But if I was to say that if we could bring all of the art and science of pruning and say, well, you're controlling sunlight penetration and you're helping air circulation, is that too
Mhm.
much of a simplification of this process?
Not really. Actually, you're contributing by regular maintenance pruning. What you're contributing is not just to maintain the good strength of your tree and proper growth and good yielding capacity potential. You're also contributing to the overall health of a tree by changing that environment within the canopy, by allowing that fast drying by moving air much faster, and drying conditions are much faster. You're improving the health by preventing the disease development. So when I start any pruning, I says, well, you start with 3 Ds. You eliminate everything that is dead, everything that is damaged, everything that is diseased. And then you stand back and look at it and says, oh, okay, now everything goes straight up, or it's crossing over, or it's rubbing, should go. And that, if you're doing this on a regular basis annually, will not have to be too big of a job. You can just make a couple, 3 cuts and move on to the next tree.
Yeah, the Mary, you were talking about the open center. Of course, we have a lot of I would say in general, most of our homeowners or even commercial orchards are apple and peach.
Mhm.
You're talking about those open center. Is this is a question I get a lot? Um, is more than 2 or 3 um, branches for the open center? More than that, too many, because it'll decrease your light penetration, or is that what I guess what is your goal for we're doing the open center? Just the strongest 3 branches and that's it?
Depends on how much space do you have. You know, if you're in a commercial setting, you can leave probably more than that, you know, 3, 4, 5, depends how they're spaced. If you have a really nice spacing at the beginning, you can leave that. And then as the years go by and that gets a little bit too tight, I mean, too crowded, you can start eliminating some of those in your winter pruning. But generally speaking, you don't want to prune peaches, especially do that fine pruning till about, they're just about pink. So you do that late. And again, to go back on one of the first questions you asked, it has to do with setting them up for freeze injury. Peaches are very sensitive, or stone fruit in general, very sensitive to that winter injury. if they have disturbed dormancy period for one reason or another, and apricots are a prime example for it. They have very unstable dormancy. So you have a couple, 3 days of nice weather, they're going to wake up and start pumping the juices. And guess what? All of a sudden, these carbs start pulling away, allowing, or through some chemical processes, you have a little bit more water concentration. And that kind of dilutes the solution that is within the membranes of the cells. You have the water in cold temperature. What happens? It freezes and busts all that stuff, and you have freeze injury. So for that reason, you want to prune them a little bit later. And that's what's happening with this, with the peaches. So prune them a little bit later.
Okay.
And at that time, the benefit also is that you're going to see if you have anything that is damaged during the winter period. So you can eliminate that and keep them nice and healthy. But for the homeowners, I would kind of stay within these 3 major scaffolds, and then just kind of work with that over the years and try to keep them. You see, you prune the peaches. Too bad I can't show you the pictures right now, but you prune peaches pretty much like grapes. And this is that mix. If you're talking about grapes, the mixed type of pruning. So you have like 3-4 buds or 2-3 buds at the lower shoot that is closer to the trunk and kind of lower. So this is your renewal wood. And then one of these shoots that is nice and strong, you leave that to produce the fruit this season. So whatever produces the fruit, that is the one that is going to be removed completely, because peaches produce the fruit only on 1-year-old wood. Same thing with the sour cherries. Once you do the harvest, if you leave that, you're growing lumber. You're not growing the fruit.
Mira,
All that.
For the cherries, are they? I know that there's still a lot of those older trees. Are they more winter hardy than your compared to peaches?
No.
Okay.
Cherries are probably number 1 when it comes to sensitivity.
Really?
Cherries, sweet cherries. And being in Michigan for forever, working with the commercial growers, they always put the cherries on the top of the hills. Best sites are reserved for cherries. Then come peaches, then come plums, and then apples go down at the bottom. But at the bottom of the list, don't put them at the bottom someplace in the hollow, because you're going to be suffering consequences of that decision for years to come.
Yeah, so you might maybe want to go up the hill just a little bit with those apple trees.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. A lot of homeowners are always worried. I get this question. They are so worried about that they're going to cut too much off and they're going to hurt this tree. What do you say about that? What would you tell homeowners?
Yes. Well, I tell them, you have to prune. Don't look at the tree. Oh, it's such a poor, little baby. I can't. And it has, like, when you look at it, it's a Charlie Brown tree. So it would really benefit to cut everything that is not in a proper place and start over. You're doing that tree a favor by cutting all of this off. It's going to put the energy initially to develop the good root system. And by the end of the season, you're going to have so many more lateral branches around that you're going to be able to pick and choose the ones that you want.
On the telephone, yes.
So
Yeah.
don't worry about cutting too much out.
It's over there and you can come get the truck.
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, all right.
I got it on mute and I can lay their phone on the seat and they
What
can
is
keep,
it? I mean,
they're talking about grass and all that on,
Go ahead,
trees
Mira.
and
All
extension.
right. So no, you're not going to hurt the tree, especially if you have a couple of leaders, and that's where homeowners make a mistake. They do not remove that immediately, and then 3-4 years down the road, you have 2 trees going and competing with each other, and then you have that bark inclusion, and where it's thawing and freezing and thawing, and then there is a physical damage there, so it's going to break. So remove that, make a nice clean cuts, let the tree grow and develop that scaffolding, and set it up for a nice, good production in years to come.
And another question that we get a lot is about fertilizer.
Oh,
The
okay.
first couple years, I mean, I guess compared to the first 2 years to an
Later on
annual,
in the life, yeah.
later on, a maintenance fertilizer, what's the big difference? And
Okay,
that
it is
first year, should we even fertilize?
it is a big difference. First of all, I would not go with pretty much standard recommendation. They say, well, put 10, 10, 10. And my answer to that is, why 10, 10, 10? Why not triple 16 or triple 19? How do you know what that tree needs? Do the soil analysis so you find out what your pH is. Basically, is it your soil alkaline or is it your soil acid? That is going to greatly influence the availability of the nutrients that are already present in the ground. If it is too acid, some of the heavy metals like your aluminum, for example, and lead might become more available to the uptake for the plants, and that can lead to mortality of your trees. If it is too alkaline, then you're going to have other issues that again can have fatal effects. So the best way to deal with this issue is to try to maintain, or if you have to do that before planting, would be the best, to amend your soil to have the pH pretty much close to neutral. The neutral is 7. So you want to be on a slightly acid side. So you're talking about between 6.2, 6.5, so that would be sort of like optimum for the fruit trees. Now,
Saying as a goal, we should have about pH to be about 6.2 for fruit trees.
Yeah, 6.2 to 6.5, so that's something, to have. Secondly, depends again on the size of a tree. If everything is normal, you have the soil analysis, you have done the amendments, you planted your tree. Now, what do you do for the next 3 years? Well, you will kind of spoon feed that tree. By spoon feeding means that you're going to, particularly when you're dealing with nitrogen, you're going to give it a little bit over time, not all at once. If I put all my nitrogen, let's say in April, with all these rains and everything, all of this is going to go past the root zone before my tree wakes up. So I'm not going to do this. I might give it maybe 1/3 of the requirement in April, just when it starts to bud, and when it starts to show, like before bloom, because the tree is going to work off the reserves and usually runs out of the reserves. And that's one more reason you don't want to prune too early the young trees, because they're pulling out some of these carbs stored within the branches and root system. And so if you eliminate some of that, you're basically cutting out some of the reserves that they live on at the first period till they start pushing out the leaves, and those leaves start to photosynthesize. So that's about the time when you want to give them a little help. So give them a handful. You basically give them 1 ounce for each diameter, for each inch of diameter of the trunk. Okay, so if I'm talking just like 2-year-old tree, it's gonna be just 1 ounce. Then 2-3 years down the road, maybe a couple ounces, so this is if it's like 2-3 inches in diameter, it doesn't need more than 3 ounces of fertilizer. So instead of giving it all at once, I might give them 1 ounce, let's say in April, beginning of May, and then go about 2-3 weeks later, give them another ounce, and then go another 3 weeks later, give them that last ounce that it needs. By doing so, you're preventing the leaching and all that nitrogen fertilizer is going to be used up rather than lost. So this is what I mean by spoon feeding the tree. And when you're dealing with nitrogen, those split applications, whether you're talking about the fruit trees or you're talking about your lawn, it's always the same reasoning behind it. You want that fertilizer to be used up rather than flushed out of the soil profile and go into aquifer. You don't want that. So that's what, basically you want to give them the fertilizer like that. And based on your analysis, you will see which elements are needed. Oftentimes we don't need to add any phosphorus at all because the soil has plenty of it. Maybe a little bit of potash, and at the time of planting, probably a combination of something that has a little bit more potash, because the potash is going to be the one, and phosphorus, to influence the development of the root system.
Mira,
And
maybe if we want to, I want to move on real quick to
okay,
variety selection.
okay,
We know that, compared to a big orchard, we've only got a homeowner may only have, maybe a dozen
1 or
trees,
2, yeah,
anywhere from 1 to a dozen trees.
okay,
How important is it for disease selection, disease
yes.
resistance for these trees that they put?
That is very important. And diseases are something that, even if you know what to do and when to do it, you have problem with. I work with commercial growers, and my growers were well-educated people. Many of them had master's degrees in horticulture. So that's what I'm saying. They knew what to do and when to do it, and still had issues with it. With the homeowners, first of all, you don't really want to go with something. I know you might be attracted to, let's say, Rome, or you might be attracted to Gala, or you might be attracted to Golden Delicious. But all these varieties I told you right now are sensitive to fire blight. The fire blight is one of the deadliest diseases that we have, and one of the most economically important diseases. It will kill the tree. It's not if, but when. Usually takes a few years, but the tree is a goner. If the tree is a small one, as soon as you see the symptoms of fire blight, I would just take my losses right there and then and remove it. You don't want that inoculum sitting without your orchard, whether you have 10 trees or 10,000 trees. So go with the disease-resistant varieties. Go with something, if you want some early varieties, you can go, let's say, Pristine or Prima. No, Prima probably not. It's a great variety, but it is moderately susceptible to fire blight. It's probably going to be better Priscilla, Pristine, Williams Pride. So these are 3 early apple varieties that you can grow. If you want something a little bit later, Then you can go with, let's say, Grimes Golden. That would be one that is pretty good. Then you can go with Enterprise. So that's another one. So something like that, just make sure that you pay attention particularly to fire blight. The other fungal diseases are a little bit more manageable. Sprays that are applied at the right timing can pretty much control those diseases. But with fire blight, that's a tricky one. Once you have that disease, no matter how much you prune, if you have some in the older trees, if you see the canker, the fire blight canker, you need to eliminate that from the orchard by cutting, and you'll see different trains of thoughts here. Some people say 8 to 12 inches, I say 18. You want to cut as far as possible from the margin of that visible canker, because it spreads through the tissue and you don't see it. So if you cut not enough, that is going to continue to develop, and it will cause the dieback of that limb, or God forbid, trunk. If it happens in the trunk, just cut it, make one cut down at the bottom of at the soil ground.
Mira, when we're
remove it.
talking about about fire blight, and I know that a lot of homeowners love to plant pears, and
Yeah.
they're a big carrier of that.
Oh,
Are there
yes.
should they just not plant any pear trees, or are
No.
there some disease?
No. There's some really nice pears that you can go, and there are a few, I think a couple, three that come from Vineland, from Ontario, from Canada. And then there's some from originated US, but one of the nicest ones are probably, if you go into Stark Brothers catalog and just go with the disease-resistant pears, you're going to find the Moon Glow. It's a nice pear that is sort of a like Bartlett type, but it is red. It has a really nice color to it, and it tastes really good. Then you have the Supreme, and that's sort of like a Bartlett. Then there are about 3 or 4 varieties available right now that you can go with, and not that I'm promoting the Stark Brothers, but this is the oldest nursery in the US. It's more than 200 years old. So they do have, even though they're under the new ownership, it's not Stark Brothers anymore, but still goes under that name. They have a great selection, and another thing that is very important is their susceptibility to the climate environment that you live in. So you can put in your zip code, and it will tell you which zone, hardness zone you're in, and whether or not that particular variety that you selected is going to thrive or die under those circumstances.
Really? So you're saying that the Moon Glow and Supreme are resistant to fire blight, and there are some others out there.
Yes.
pears?
And there's some other ones. And I can't recall the names right now, but if you go into that particular nursery, and there's some other nurseries selling the same stuff, but this is the one that gives you that opportunity to check your hardness zone, and then go with the selection of the pears. I know some people are really into these Asian pears.
Oh, okay.
Well, they're fine, but Asian pears on average generally speaking, have a very low chill requirement. So you're not going to be able to grow them in every part of the state here. If you're in Preston County, your chill requirement of 300-400 is going to be satisfied by December, by Christmas. And if you're down in Mingo County, it might take a month longer to satisfy that. So you got to see whether you're in zone 5A or you're in zone 7A. And so Preston County is pretty much 5A and 5B. And then as you're going down the state, we have 6A, 6B, and 7A. 7A, due to this new climate change and stuff, it used to be just a little sliver around Logan and around Charleston. However, right now, pretty much the whole southern part moving towards the middle of the state is in 7A. Even Marshall County, it belongs into 7A. So it's coming, several spots. Again, that has to deal also with the topography of the place, but we are warming up in certain zones that we now have, we might lose, like 5A, who knows, in the next 20 years, 30 years, we might lose that zone.
Yeah, Mira, before we run out of time, I've got a couple other
Okay,
burning questions.
okay.
We have, I always tell, a lot of people will see these trees at the nursery, then they go and they get that thing planted. How late, I guess, as we get towards summer, how late into late spring, early summer, would you recommend to plant? I mean, I
Okay.
guess, when is it too late? It's too hot
Yeah.
and dry, I guess.
Well, I planted myself, trees, and even last spring, I planted my trees in May. But I planted, usually the nursery starts shipping the trees in March, end of March. You don't necessarily want to put them too early. If they have been like in the enclosed space, like if you go to Walmart, for example, and they keep them still inside or under a protective shed and stuff. So it needs a little acclimatization. If you're getting them from the nursery, so they have been kept pretty much dormant, even if they pulled them out very, very early and kept them in CA storage and control atmosphere storage at a low temperature. Those trees you can plant in as you get them. But you can go as far as June as long as you provide adequate irrigation to them. So don't just dig up a hole, put the tree in, and walk away from it. You'll have to make sure that at least for several weeks, that tree has enough moisture around so the root system does not dry out. So that's the most important thing. So
Yeah,
you
will
can
it
go,
help to add some mulch?
yes, definitely put some mulch around, but don't put it all the way next to the trunk. Then that mulch becomes your enemy. You have to make sort of like a bowl or pull that mulch away from the very base of the trunk, so it does not keep it too wet and you don't facilitate another disease development. But mulch definitely keeps the moisture, keeps the soil a little bit cooler than the exposed areas.
Okay, and I guess you hit pretty good. We were talking about one of the major diseases that affects our fruit trees, the fire blight. What are maybe a couple other,
The other ones,
especially for apples? What
well,
are some
I'll
other
tell you, there are two major diseases, the fire blight and the apple scab.
Okay.
There's powdery mildew would be another one, cedar apple rust. And now since I started working with the cider apples here, I had in our orchard here tremendous pressure with bitter rot and black rot. However, all these fungal diseases, if you time your control for the apple scab, you will be controlling most of these other diseases. Powdery mildew is a disease that attacks the tips, just developing and growing new tissue. So that's the most sensitive one. When it comes to apple scab, as soon as you have a little bit of a green showing, about 1/4 inch green, that tree is vulnerable for infection. In my 20 years working with commercial growers up in Michigan, I had 4 years where I had spore of this particular disease. When I had the spore discharged before I ever had the green tip. So the minute I got the green tip and that green tissue showing with the spores all around, with rain, and it depends on the temperature and duration of the rain, you have all the elements needed for infection to occur. So if you monitor the environment for disease development, this apple scab, and you spray to protect that from the apple scab, you will be controlling and managing the bitter rot and black rot to the extent. So, first of all, determine what's there, what you have a problem with, and tailor your protection program to that particular issue that you have at hand.
Yeah, Mira, what going back to the pruning, and of course maybe our homeowners won't have near as much. They're not going to prune off as much wood as a commercial orchard
Right.
would. But what should they do with all of the
With the
wood they prune
trimmings?
off? With the trimmings, yes.
Yeah, most of that, whether you see it or not, but I would recommend you pull that out. You don't have that many trees. Clean all these trimmings, put them in a garbage bags and take them out. I would be hesitant to chop that up and put it, let's say, on a compost pile, because I don't know what's lurking there. Do I potentially have the fire blight there? Do I have potentially some of these other diseases? What commercial orchards do, they put all the trimmings in the middle of the rows, and then they go and with the mower just chop up everything. Then they go and put about 10 to 15 pounds of urea. Just sprinkle it over that, because that urea is there to feed the bacteria that will decompose that organic matter and break it down. By decomposing it and breaking it down, you are killing off some of the pathogens as well. And that's, if you have 300-400 acres, 100 acres, you cannot pull all of this and burn it. But for the most part, if they have a limited fire blight infection in their orchard, maybe what they're doing, they just kind of pile that up in a pickup truck and go on a burn pile. They forever have burn piles, because they're always replacing some old trees with the new trees, and so there's always a bunch of trees to be burned, and so they just burn it. And for us, again, do not, as a homeowner, do not put that particular diseased branches, don't put that on your compost pile.
Okay. Is there any questions from the audience? I know that that Mira, we've talked extensively here about all aspects of managing fruit trees, not just pruning, but variety selection and some disease issues. And so if you have any questions, Mira's has a lot of expertise in this area. Any questions from the audience? Mira, oh, go ahead.
Just one thing I would like to mention, we did not talk about the rootstocks, but if you and when you're buying trees, don't let anybody steer you towards picking up M7. M7 is otherwise pretty nice rootstock. It has a good size. The only problem with it is that it has very shallow root system, and it will, once the tree is fully developed, it's like a big sail. It will pick up the wind and it will topple down. So don't buy Geneva 30. It has very brittle graft union, so it's going to break. But overall, M series, these are older rootstocks. They have been in production for many, many decades. It's not that they're bad, but we have better ones right now in Geneva rootstocks. The Geneva rootstocks, and they come like G and then number follows. They're specially bred for resistance to fire blight, resistance to color and root rot, and resistance to woolly apple aphids. So of these Geneva rootstocks, if you want the self-standing tree, basically you don't have to put the post or anything like that. You go with the semi-dwarf rootstocks, and probably one of the best that Geneva has is 890. So that would be G890. If you want to have something like espalier, or you want to put a dwarf, couple of rows of dwarf trees on dwarf rootstocks, then what I found out, one of the best ones that came out of some of the rootstock trials done at Michigan State and elsewhere, is Geneva 45 and Geneva 11. So these two, but probably G45 is better.
Okay, we are about out of time here,
Okay.
Mira. So, like I said, if how do we contact you if someone has some other questions?
Yeah, you can contact me by sending me an email. The email is Mira, M-I-R-A Danilovich, D like Dennis, ANILOVICH @mail.wvu.edu, or just contact one of your local county people and they will give you my email so you can get in touch with me.
Great. We sure have talked about a lot of interesting aspects of managing grown fruit trees. Of course, Mira, my dad always told me there's two types of music, country and Western. Are you a country music fan, and do you have a favorite artist?
Well, depends, I do like some of the country music, and I like Willie Nelson.
Oh, there you go. I do too. Good old Willie Nelson.
Yes, I like Cash too. So
Oh, okay. Well, Willie, he's got that song about on the road again. That's kind of the
yes, I like that.
story of an extension agent's life on the road again.
Yeah, we are.
We're running around crazy.
You know what? We
So
need to join Teamsters. We put so many miles.
there you go. Oh, I had real quick. We have another question.
Okay.
Persimmon how do we prune a persimmon tree?
Well, that's a
And
tricky
pawpaw, I
one.
guess. Persimmon
Uh,
and pawpaw. That's the stump question for today.
Yeah, the pawpaw you can pretty much prune like any other, forest tree or fruit tree. Try to eliminate anything that goes, straight up, crossing, and open up the crown for better air penetration and drying. But for persimmon, that's a little bit different.
Okay.
So
Well, that's about all the time that we have for today. But we appreciate having you on as a guest. Mira, and we'll have to have you on again.
Thank
Um,
you. Thanks
we
for having me.
we could spend all day talking about fruit trees. We have a few here at our farm. Of course, I try to select those disease resistant ones because I'm not good at spraying. Um, just wanted to remind everyone that programs and activities offered by West Virginia University Extension Service are available to all persons without regard to race, color, sex, disability, religion, age, veteran status, political belief, sexual orientation, national origin, and marital or family status. And next week, we will be live at the Appalachian Grazing Conference up in Morgantown. And the following week, the 18th of March, we will have Kevin Schaefer and Jerry Yates. We'll be talking about the West Virginia Young Sire programs, the one in Wardensville and the one there in the Southern Bull Test. So I am glad to, like I said, happy to see everyone today. And I hope that everyone has a great weekend, and we will see you next week on Mountaineer Farm Talk.